Do you hear that? That's right. If you're really quiet, you can hear. In the hills, in the highlands, the Highland call, calling out to you. It's singing. What is it singing? It's singing. That we're back with another review. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Eric. This is Gerry Tonella.
Hi, everybody.
And we are here today because we want to talk to you about Brigadoon. This is a lovely new production that just opened at the Pasadena Playhouse. You already saw, but I have a drink in my hand, as does Gerry. Cheers. This very Scottish show. We should be drinking scotch. We're not going to tell you what we're drinking. Like I said, this new production of Brigadoon just opened this past weekend. We were lucky enough to score tickets last night. Gerry, you really wanted to be a part of this review.
Did.
Why did you want to?
I want to be in that.
Why did you want to join me for this review of Brigadoon? Right?
Because this is our second time in the year seeing Brigadoon.
Within the last 6 months. No? Within the last 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
A year for sure. We saw it last September at the Regent's Park Open Air Theatre in London. Mm-hmm. And it was a wonderful production. We both put it on top of our shows that we saw in the year. So we were curious to see. I mean,
I'll say we were also very, very sleep deprived at that production as well. Both of us had a very intense emotional reaction to that show, but I think that was just because we had been traveling for over 24 hours.
Yes, but now that I've seen it again, I do think that the show is a good show.
Is good.
And I think that's something that we were very excited to see with Pasadena. We love their work. So we were very excited for them to do this show that we had just seen, and we saw great productions. We were both hopeful, cautious optimism.
Yeah.
So
because it's really easy. Golden Age musicals are so hit or miss. This is a musical from 1947. It's from that very early American musical era when you're getting things like Oklahoma, when you're getting lots of those Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals. And this is by Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Loewe, the Lerner and Loewe duo. And so when I saw the show last year with Gerry in the West End, I really loved that production, but it was hard to tell, was it just me loving this particular production, this updated book that premiered with this West End production, or do I genuinely love this show? So that's why I wouldn't say hesitant coming into Pasadena Playhouse, because I think you and I both expect a lot from that theater. But I was a little nervous going in, going, oh no, what if it turns out that I just liked that production, not necessarily the show itself. This production is also a production that is premiering a new book as well. This is a new production with a book by Alexandra Silber. She has updated the original Lerner and Loewe text. All of the songs are still intact. However, sort of our two main characters have been updated in terms of they are from the present day rather than from the 40s setting that the show used to be. However, the show does keep its main time period setting, which is a Scottish village in the 1700s. The village of Brigadoon. Gerry, do you want to do a quick plot description of Brigadoon for us?
Yes. So Brigadoon,
I also put it right over here. The Pasadena Playhouse.
Brigadoon is about two American travelers who happen to go to the Scottish Highlands, and then among them they get lost and then find this secret village through the mist called Brigadoon. Eventually, you find out that Brigadoon exists in this separate time, and I'm not gonna get too much into the lore, but basically, it's an enchanting little village with secrets, and that's where I'll leave it.
And there's love.
There's a lot of love,
lust. There's grief. There's a surprising amount of grief in this show. These Golden Age musicals are so good at capturing very intense emotion, whether it be love or grief or celebration or mourning. And I think that a lot of that comes from the power of the music and the power of the voices, and it really, in the particular case of this Pasadena Playhouse version, I really think that the direction and the clarity of the direction and the intention of the direction with such an old text, I think really shines through, and for me, was the most impressive part. This is a production that is both choreographed and directed by Katie Spielman. And I don't know about you, Gerry, I love a director-choreographer.
I do too.
I love when you can tell that the director also had a lot of say in the choreography of a show. Oftentimes, I think you can see the vision of the choreographer and the vision of the director can kind of clash. They're not necessarily always in harmony. I love when it's a clear vision of the staging is also integral to the actual movement and the mechanics of like the musical moments in the show.
And I think for me that was the highlight of the show. It is, and I told Eric, I was like, this was directed by a director choreographer, because like right after the show, because you could absolutely tell in every little movement, it was like watching a Golden Age movie. Like it was every single little thing and movement and head movement and turn was so well done and so well executed, and it flowed with the music. And so I think that was it made the entire show really move, and it's a long show, and it moved really quickly, and it really made every emphasis on a lot of things that like even the plot was very easy to follow because of, I think, the direction.
I think that Katie Spellman finds such good like moments to change the energy inside of these scenes. There's a lot of high energy moments, but this show has a lot of ballads. You might think of Heather on the Hill. It has Almost Like Being in Love is probably the show's most iconic song. You've also got Waitin' for My Dearie. And so even in the times when the show is slowing down in its musical pace, Katie Spellman is able to like find these like energy shifts and these ways to like change levels or change status in the blocking, and then also bring that kind of change of status between characters' relationships into the choreography as well. And so I think the through line through the moments that are musical and the moments that are not is what sort of binds the story and the book of this new book. It binds this new book and weaves it so beautifully into like the iconic songs that have always like been a part of this show. And all of it is framed so beautifully. And I do mean it is literally framed by the scenic designer of this show, Jason Sherwood. This set has this big, beautiful stone archway. It reminds you of like the cobblestone bridges and streets and walls that you would see in the Scottish Highlands. The show has this beautiful patina in its set design, like all of these stone bricks. Also, how you can see that they've inserted like little growths of like little growths of like moss. That's the word. The bricks have like these like little bits of moss painted in or bits of grass sticking out from the stones as if they've been there for centuries. The way that they have realized just this sort of proscenium that goes in front of the proscenium of the Pasadena Playhouse stage, it immediately evokes this feeling of a portal or a window in through which the travelers who end up in Brigadoon, but also us, the audience, are able to see this world and view the stories of these people in this world.
I commend it for also being very not being afraid to be beautiful and be fantasy and fantastical. Mm-hmm. I told Eric, and this is the highest of regards from us, that there was a theme parkiness in a good way to the design. Because it was beautiful. It felt a fairy tale like if Brigadoon felt fairy tale like, and it was a great contrast to, you know, these characters that are supposed to be from the present world that just go into this fantasy beautiful town in the Scottish Highlands. So I loved how it was that it wasn't like, it was still evoking other things, but there were a lot of layers. It was very, people went into like the arches, like you said. They picked up they picked flowers off the set. They were climbing the archway at some parts. My favorite moment, and it might go into lighting a little bit by Jamie Smith, but there was at the very beginning, and it happens at the end again, but the bridge that they're on, and then it just opens. And then there is this bridge on the set that opens up and like flips around and like has a different few ways it's played with in the show. But before that happened, because they're supposed to be in the Scottish Highlands in this mist, and then I'm assuming it was intentional. Maybe it was a happy accident, but like when it parted, it slowly parted, and like the way that the light was hitting it, kind of created what happens when you're watching the sky and it's gloomy and then suddenly a ray of light comes in. Like that, and that happened.
Like the clouds parting.
Yeah, like the clouds parting, and that happened when they opened. And it was just the lighting with the set piece moving.
And it's playing with like, there's lots of fog being pumped into the set as well. It's such a beautiful, like, you know, creating a daytime environment in an indoor space. I think it really does contrast interestingly with the version that we saw in the West End, because that was in an outdoor stage. And so in that production on the West End, they had all of these outdoor trees and they had a real park to play with. And so there was realism bringing us into the world there. And so I think because of that, the set was a little more suggestive in that production. The set is a lot more literal in this Pasadena Playhouse. And I think it's all the more impressive, especially considering that, like, this show had budget. This show had capital B budget on it, and you can see it on stage. They did something that I've been bugged at by the Pasadena Playhouse for a while, and a lot of LA theaters, but Pasadena Playhouse especially, because they are the state theater of California, we should expect the highest quality of them. The last couple of shows, they've either had like a pure white psych backdrop for their show and nothing else, or they've just literally used the bare back wall of the theater. And so for them to like create this, it was almost like a Technicolor film, this like painted backdrop that gave you the feeling of like looking out over the Scottish Highlands, where you saw like foggy mountains in the distance. There's such a good use of forced perspective in the way that they like have this backdrop. And then you mentioned this little bridge that can also flip around and sort of act like a hill. And then the actors like walk up this half circular object that looks like a hill that they're picking feathers off of, but the way that this green velvety fabric is layered, it creates the idea of like tears going up a mountain. And I was just so impressed and pleased that like Pasadena really shelled out and created like a Broadway caliber, Broadway quality in its look. Very theme parky, but like in the most positive way possible for a show that is about being intoxicating and being entranced by like the majesty and the beauty of nature. It was very, very well executed, I thought.
Also, another like big highlight for me is just the quality of talent on stage. Was insane. Those voices. I've had the pleasure of seeing both Max von Essen and Betsy Morgan before, and they're incredible. But to see them together was just wow. When they were duetting, even Waiting for My Dearie, like when Betsy Morgan started singing, and it was so dynamic, and like it was just like, how is her voice so perfectly coming out, and she's moving, and it's just like it was like watching a Golden Age musical theater film. Like it makes me
miss like that. This is what we used to expect of Broadway quality voices. Yes. This operatic tone, this timbre, this emotion through singing.
Yes, and it's like this. It's still grounded, and it was still grounded and motivated. Like every single movement that she made, every single choice, but it sounded so like pristine, like truly pristine. Like her voice and everybody's. I think
like a highlight for me is Max von Essen's Almost Like Being in Love, which is kind of one of the most iconic Golden Age love songs. But the way that he just is able to like emote and give you these different the different aspects of love that are being like portrayed in this show about love and about what are you willing to give up for love, and like hearing the desperation in his voice. My whole thing with Golden Age musicals, it took me a really long time to love this like Golden Age Oklahoma, South Pacific, King and I, My Fair Lady, She Loves Me, all of these shows from these eras. I used to not like them because I used to think that they were really boring. And I think that is because, yes, these texts are old, but it's really easy to ironically detach yourself from the purity of the emotion in these texts. I didn't like Oklahoma until I saw a production of Oklahoma where the performers treated the words, the book of the show, and also the way that they sung the lyrics. If you treat these things as seriously as something like William Shakespeare, if you are like taking yourself to those emotional highs as a performer, you can elicit the most emotional reactions out of people if you are taking these somewhat simple stories and playing them as if they are the most important thing in the world. And I think that when you have performers like Max von Essen or Betsy Morgan, that you can just you want to sing with them because you feel everything that they are feeling because they are communicating how they are feeling so beautifully through their singing and through their performances.
I also loved my favorite scene possibly in the entire show was the ballet between Jean and Charlie, which Come to Me, the song Come to Me. But that
the
ballet,
song that sounds like Phantom of the Opera, sounds like Music of the Night.
but it was first. So Phantom of the Opera sounds like this. That was such a beautifully like it was, and again, we'd seen the show before, and in that, it was one of the highlights too. But here was like, to me, a showstopper.
And I feel like it is like probably the most iconic choreo moment in the show. This was choreographed originally by Agnes B. DeMille, who also did a lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals. She's one of those people who's always credited on the show as like original choreography by Agnes B. DeMille, even if she didn't have anything to do. Is it Agnes DeMille? Agnes B. DeMille? Hold on.
DeMille.
Agnes DeMille, yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, and so I thought Daniel Yearwood's voice and his yearning was just so beautiful, and then Kylie Victoria Edwards, what a dancer. Like, it was just so graceful. Again, right. it was that for me was like, oh, I'm watching this.
It's one of the more iconic dance moments in the show because this is a moment, it's the young lovers and they're about to be wed, but Charlie isn't allowed to like see the young wife that he's about to wed, so he blindfolds himself and he sings this love song, and then while he's blindfolded they dance this beautiful pas de deux moment. It's like this beautiful 5-minute ballet that goes on where they are sort of like sneaking around each other, where she can see him but he can't see her, and there's such a playfulness to it, and the way that they use the stage in this moment where they're going back and forth between being inside this cottage and being outside again. It's one of the most like graceful moments. I think that the Pasadena Playhouse stage is not the most massive stage, and so for them to like have these beautiful choreo moments that aren't necessarily the biggest like kicks or flips, but instead it's all very like small but intentional in its movement. Like the smallest leg movement or the slightest like tick of the head is so important, especially in a show in a smaller stage that it still requires so much bigness in the performance and in the emotion of it all. I do think that was one of the highlights and one of the better moments of showcasing like, oh my god, like we can get talent like this in Los Angeles. I think oftentimes we in LA settle for less when we deserve more because we just assume that we're not in New York. But then you see shows like this at the Pasadena Playhouse where you have dancers of this caliber and singers of this caliber that are just able to like put on a show, like a show. Yeah, it's one of my favorite moments of the show too. Congrats to Daniel and Kylie. I think probably our two performance highlights in the show.
Yeah, but again, everybody. Donna Vivino was the lady in the tavern.
Yeah.
I forget her name.
Every Golden Age musical has the sultry barmaid lady who's had a lot of men in her life and had a lot of love, but she's going to find real love one day.
She was so fun.
And maybe it's you, Happy Anderson, who was sort of the co-male lead of this show.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I'm sad. I feel like he is not going to be talked about as much as Max von Essen.
He doesn't get a song.
I
just realized it as I was like thinking about this.
Yeah, so it's like we said, it's about these two friends from the present day who end up in this far off magical Scottish village. Max von Essen is the one who finds love, while Happy Anderson, who plays Jeff, is the one who's a little more skeptical of this town, doesn't have a song, doesn't really want to sing, but he also brings like sort of like this grounded, a realistic take on like how would someone really react if suddenly they just realize that they were sent back in time 300 years. Happy Anderson as this, modern American man who is sort of nonplussed by what's going on while his friend is being swept up by it all. I thought they were two great foils for each other. I also think that he ends up sort of being surprisingly the heart of the show, especially at the end.
And on that, I also want to shout out Jessica Lee Keller as Maggie. She is a great example of that grief and a pivotal moment in Act 2. There's like a mourning dance that happens, and she really like destroys herself on stage, but like in a very beautiful, graceful way, and it's so. You
Another,
don't get
another
to see,
dance highlight of the show.
You
for
don't
me.
get to see these kinds of. It's almost. That's another thing I love about these Golden Age musicals. That you don't get to see these anymore. Like these expressions that are harkening back to ballet and to opera, where it's like there's this pause and this person gets to dance their way through that feeling. So I thought she did a phenomenal job,
as well as the entire ensemble. Like this is a musical. This is a quintessential musical ensemble piece where you feel not just the performance. I also think you have to give credit to the costume design by Raquel Adorno, who was able to like craft these elegant Scottish costumes that are so like representative of that time, but are also a little fantastical and very brightly colored. She's able to give so many of these ensemble members individual personalities just in their visual presentation. I will say you didn't really agree with me on this point. I do think that like sometimes the stage is a little too crowded. Sometimes I think this show, I applaud wanting to have so many people in this show, but there are some bigger ensemble numbers that to me felt very crowded. Especially because you are trying to do these very beautiful dances that are choreographed by Katie Spellman. And then sometimes you get a little lost not knowing where to look because there's not just the ensemble on stage, but then you also have moments where members of the band come on stage also dressed in period costumes and then you're also like trying to figure out where the principal characters are. And then there's also story moments being woven into that choreo. It gets a little messy. And then there's the arch, and you have that big arch, which I love the big arch, but the arch also squishes them in a little bit closer in a way where I felt a little cramped for me.
I fully disagree. Mm-hmm. I loved that it felt crowded because the only time it really for me felt crowded was that wedding scene. Mm-hmm. And I thought it made sense. I thought it made sense because also what happens right after, which is when everything just like flips on its head because of something that happens at that wedding. So I think the crowdedness made you kind of like feel like you were in this like, oh, it's this chaotic fun celebration, and then this happens and you're like, well. There was another point that I wanted to mention because I also thought it was a good directorial choice when they're at that scene and it does feel very crowded and the bagpipes are there. They're playing in the very back of the room. They're there, but you can barely hear. And I was like, why can I barely hear the bagpipes? Like, But I'm assuming this was intentional because you hear all the other instruments, all the like, you know, the strings, everything else is on the foreground.
There's a flute on stage. There's a cello on stage.
And it overpowers the bagpipe, but you're like, what? The bagpipe is overpowered? How? But then what happens is that then in the second act, when this morning dance happens, the only instrument playing and it's like blaring sound is the bagpipe. And for me, that was a very interesting of like, it's the same room, but now we have this like, it's kind of like going back to your roots. I don't know. That's the way I took it. And it's like, so I liked the crowdedness because it kind of made you get lost in it. And then in that second act, you kind of focus in on the things that are important to that community.
Yeah, I think it's trading a little bit of clarity for a greater sense of realism, which I appreciate, especially in a show that is so fantastical and can be read as a fairy tale despite not having like fairy tale creatures, but it is about a place lost in time. I appreciate the need to make Brigadoon really feel like a real place with real people that have real struggles, even though they're living in this somewhat utopian society trapped in time. I will also say, again, it's a hard case of like trying not to compare this version that we saw to the version that we saw in London. But I did not love or appreciate the book revisions in this version of the show compared to the ones that we saw last year. But there are some major plot differences between the two versions that we've now seen. This version of Pasadena Playhouse is a lot more accurate to the original production. It follows a lot more of the same plot elements, whereas the West End revival that we saw last year kind of completely changes the ending and completely changed some of the motivations of the main characters. I appreciate I appreciate wanting to stick to what is more closely known as like the basic plot to the show. I also didn't love Actually, no, you finished. You give
No, I was going to say, so I was reading the playwright Alexandra Silber's, her playwright's note on the program, and it was very lovely, very illuminating too, because it is, there's so much grief, and the way that she channeled into even, like, writing this show I thought was really beautiful. The one thing I wish you get in this version of the show, the ending does change slightly. It's still faithful to the original, but it does change slightly, particularly the character of Happy.
Character of
Happy, the actor Happy.
Happy plays Jeff.
Particularly the character of Jeff. Because
you were getting a little Happy Loman in there, Jeff the salesman. Different kind of Happy.
Particularly the character of Jeff, because he reveals something that happened to him that kind of makes you understand his character more, and it kind of sums up the entire show. Part of me wishes that we could have gotten at least more of a hint. Maybe it was there, but I couldn't tell. But at least more of a hint of that during the entire show, so that it kind of made a little, because it did kind of come out of the blue to me.
It kind of like back end. It's very heavy on the back end with character motivations and character intentions.
Yeah.
Which I agree is that we find out a lot about these characters only in the last like 10 minutes of the show. And not in a way that feels like they're making some grand reveal. It's just, oh, by the way, this is what was going on with me emotionally the whole time. And I do wish that would have been established, at least from the beginning. And maybe it is. Like, I might see the show again. I really did love the production. I might see it again. So I might pay attention more closely to the book and see if there's more hints about these characters' backgrounds that are maybe more hinted at if I knew where it's going.
You know what happens in the original one, right?
It's more so that
he's actually getting married.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, the main, so Jeff.
Yeah.
Not Jeff. Tommy. Tommy's getting married. And he cancels the wedding, basically. And then he goes to Scotland.
Which is a crazy move to do. And in this version, he doesn't have a fiance. He's just a sad
which
lonely
I
man.
liked better. I think that was better. Again, my only thing is I wish Jeff's backstory was just a little bit more hinted in the beginning, and I think maybe it could. Like this is the premiere of this book. I think it is good, and this is a good version of the book that's very faithful to the original, I believe. Because I do think the other one that we saw is way more of a departure. I really liked what that one did. I especially like the ending of the one that we saw in London. But I do think that this is a little bit more of closer to the original vision of the show. And
the purists will be happy.
Yeah, if you want to do more
the Brigadoon super stands.
I feel like the other one is like more of a risk. Like, if not done well, it could end up weird.
Yeah.
So,
but we're not talking about that.
We're not talking about that. I will say something that I did think about, and I wonder, maybe somebody can comment and there's more information. But it did set me thinking of, like I was telling you yesterday, I wonder how much Lerner and Loewe, when they wrote this, were kind of, because it is said that they were inspired by Oklahoma.
And this was only like a couple of years after Oklahoma premiered that this came out.
And I wonder, I mean, part of me was like, is this a big metaphor for musical theater as an art form? Because it's this fantastical world where everybody dances and sings, and our characters don't. Like, if you think, like, Jeff never sings, and then Tommy does, but that's another thing that I also found, because obviously Max von Dozen is incredible and the direction was incredible, but like the transition with him singing made sense to me. Like, it was like this character that seems like so like he doesn't belong, and the way that he eased into the singing, beautiful. But I wonder how much the original creation is a metaphor on, like, musical theater as an art form is this perfection world that we
I don't know. I feel like musical theater was so early in its inception at the time. I don't think that they were aware of what was meta and what was not at the time. I think they were just making things. I
disagree. I think that they were bright. They were bright, wonderful people. Cut that. No,
and you knew them personally.
I do think I knew them personally. Yeah, I know. You went to college with them. I do think that it was. I don't know. I do put it past me that they could have done something like that, because it is this. I mean, it's also a commentary on cinema and all of like this getting lost in this fantasy world that doesn't really exist, that is kind of trapped in time, and wanting to be a part of it, and like. I don't know. I wonder if it could be like a meta commentary on like the people that create these shows and how part of them does get stuck in there.
I think
maybe for another production.
Yes, this is a bigger conversation.
Yes.
I will say again, going back to the book updates, I don't really love the idea of our two travelers literally being from the year 2026. There's a moment in the beginning of the show where Jeff's character, who is the more cynical of the two, says like, this is how podcasts start. And he makes that joke like 2 times in like 3 minutes. And like, I groaned both times at that. Like, I don't, no matter, like, regardless of how you're updating the text of a musical from the 1940s about a village stuck in the 1700s, I don't want to know that cell phones even exist for the people who are at the center of this show. Like, to me, I think the show, I think there is something very pure about keeping these two characters from the time period in which the show was written, especially because it is, you know, these Golden Age musicals were coming out of like a post-World War II era. I think that there's a lot to say about like the way that Americans viewed the world and that the way that the world viewed them, especially in that period. I guess you could say like people have feelings about how they feel about Americans right now in 2026 also. I didn't need some of the more quirky Marvel-ish dialogue from these two characters from Manhattan in 2026.
I do think it doesn't, like, it wasn't, because I was also like concerned at the beginning when they did those little throwaway podcast jokes, but it wasn't as bad as, like, once you were past that, they didn't really, like, it wasn't.
It falls off.
It falls off, and I thought it was kind of almost universal to a point because you know so little about these characters, which I think was a strong point in the other book that we saw. But again, it works that I feel like the book is lenient enough that you could still sense the podcast jokes. You could still, you know, you could do it in 10 or 20 years, or you could have done it like 10 or 20 years ago and it would have been fine. Because like cell phones, they don't even say that cell phones don't have service, but you assume that cell phones don't have service in the islands.
This review is running really long. We got to wrap it up. I think it's pretty obvious we recommend this show. Like, for sure. Like, this is one of, like, the must-see musicals in LA this year. Pasadena Playhouse, they knocked it out of the park again. Especially their musicals. They have been doing this, like, re-examination of, like, the American musical canon for the last couple of years. They focused really heavily on Sondheim a few years ago. And they're bringing these shows that I don't think have as much cultural relevance, at least for these like current theater going audiences. I think that they are really bringing new life into these shows and holding on to what makes them iconic and what makes them these timeless, powerful things. And I think that like this is a prime example of like a show that not a ton of people know a lot about anymore. And now we've seen it twice this year and loved it both times. I'm glad that Pasadena Playhouse is doing the work and doing the work effectively to keep these things relevant. It is now running through June 14th at the Pasadena Playhouse. You can get tickets ranging from $44 to $137. That's on their website, but also on TodayTix. You can get tickets for as low as $29 if you sign up for the Rush program. And I also found this out today that there are a few performances that are pay what you can, where you can pay as low as $10 a ticket if you really want to see their show. So there's options. These things are semi-accessible, and I really hope that the word gets out about the show. I think it is. The show's getting very positive review, and I'm really happy to hear that. But that is all I have to say about this. Jerry, do you have any final thoughts on Brigadoon?
I'm just so happy that it's a great show. Like, I'm happy that we saw it twice.
I love when it's good.
I'm happy that we saw it twice. And I think at the end of the day, it's a show that is very inspiring. There's something in it that does feel still, like, very relevant. And
it makes you happy to be in love.
It makes you happy to be in love. And
we're boyfriends, by the way. I don't know if you got that part.
They know. Okay. They know the lore. But no, it does. It is a lovely show. And I'm happy that we saw both like two very drastically different productions on two sides of the world, and they were beautiful. And I'm so proud that this production in LA, where we live, is beautiful as well, and so beautifully well realized. So go see it while you can. It's been a long time since I've seen a production of this magnitude and beauty in LA, so I'm happy that we have it.
Wonderful. And if you saw Brigadoon, let us know what you thought about it. If you're a fan of the movie, let me know. I've never seen the movie. I would love to go back and watch it. If you're a fan of Schmigadoon, which is the Apple TV Plus parody musical television show that also just opened its own musical version on Broadway, let us know what you think of Schmigadoon. I am curious now. I might watch Schmigadoon.
Yeah, we should watch
just because of how much I love Brigadoon now.
It's time
Friends,
to go back to the real world.
time to go back to the real world. Grab your bagpipes, throw on your tartan.
We love you.
Do your best Scottish accent. We love you, listener.
We love you.
Like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.
Love you.
Goodbye.
Okay, we should finish up because I am sweating.
Me too. Oh, we didn't even talk about Tyne Daly. Oh, she could be a surprise
who?
for them. About Tyne Daly, old lady.
Oh, that's right.
We can talk about
She
her.
forgot things.
She
Doesn't get a shout out.
I love iconic older women character actors in musicals. I don't care if they're forgetting their lines. I don't care if they don't know what side of the stage they're supposed to walk to. I thought that all the actors in this show were great.
Not